Staff Sergeant Marcus Williams stood at his kitchen window, watching the Wyoming snow fall across his small ranch property. The silence stretched endlessly around him, broken only by the distant howl of winter wind through the mountains. 5 years had passed since he returned from his final deployment. 5 years since he lost everything that mattered in the chaos of evacuation. His hands trembled slightly as he gripped his coffee cup, the familiar weight of grief settling over his shoulders like an old combat vest. The empty dog bed by the fireplace remained exactly where he left it, a shrine to Rex, his German Shepherd partner who vanished during the frantic withdrawal from Forward Operating Base Chapman. Marcus had searched everywhere, called every contact, filed every possible report, but Afghanistan had swallowed his best friend whole. The VA counselor said he needed to move forward, accept the loss, but Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that Rex was still out there somewhere, waiting for him to come home. The phone rang at exactly 3:17 in the afternoon, cutting through Marcus' solitude like a blade. He almost didn't answer, recognizing the international number format that usually meant spam calls or scammers. Something made him pick up on the fourth ring. Perhaps the same instinct that kept him alive through 3 combat tours. The voice on the other end spoke broken English with a heavy accent, claiming to be Dr. Elena Vasquez from a veterinary clinic in rural Montana. She explained that she had found Marcus' contact information embedded in a military-grade microchip, one that she discovered while treating a severely injured German Shepherd brought to her clinic by mysterious circumstances. The dog had wandered into town during a blizzard, half frozen and bearing scars that told stories of survival no animal should endure. Marcus' heart hammered against his ribs as Dr. Vasquez described the dog's markings, the distinctive white patch over his left eye, the way he responded to military commands. When she said the name Rex softly over the phone, Marcus heard a distant bark in the background that sent electricity through his entire body. His legs gave out, and he sank into his kitchen chair, unable to speak through the sudden flood of emotion that threatened to drown him completely. Dr. Vasquez Clinic sat 90 miles north of Marcus Ranch, nestled in the Absaroka Mountains where civilization thinned to nothing but wilderness and weather. Marcus drove through the snowstorm with desperate urgency, his truck's headlights carving tunnels through the swirling white darkness. The radio crackled with weather warnings about impassable roads and stranded motorists, but nothing could stop him from reaching Rex after 5 years of wondering, hoping, and grieving. His mind raced with questions that had no answers. How had Rex survived? How did he travel from Afghanistan to Montana? Who brought him here, and why was the veterinarian being so secretive about the details? The mountains loomed on both sides of the narrow highway like ancient sentinels, their peaks lost in the storm clouds that seemed to press down from heaven itself. Marcus gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white, fighting against wind gusts that threatened to push his truck off the road. Every mile brought him closer to either the greatest joy or the most crushing disappointment of his life. The uncertainty gnawed at his stomach like shrapnel, but he pressed forward through the storm because some bonds transcend time, distance, and even the chaos of war. The veterinary clinic appeared through the blizzard like a beacon, its windows glowing yellow against the howling darkness. Marcus stumbled through the snow drifts, his heart pounding so hard he could feel it in his throat. Dr. Vasquez met him at the door, a small woman with concerned eyes and gentle hands that had clearly spent years healing animals. She led him through the quiet hallway toward the recovery kennels, explaining that the dog had been unconscious for 3 days after arriving in town. Someone had left him at her doorstep during the worst part of the storm, along with a note written in careful handwriting that simply said, "This soldier needs to go home." The writing was unfamiliar, but something about it nagged at Marcus' memory like a half-remembered dream. As they approached the last kennel, Marcus heard movement inside, the familiar sound of paws against tile that he had listened for every night since coming home. Dr. Vasquez unlocked the kennel door slowly, and Marcus held his breath as a German shepherd's head appeared around the corner. The dog looked older, scarred by years of unknown hardship, but those eyes were unmistakable. Rex stared at Marcus for a long moment, as if unable to believe what he was seeing, then launched himself forward with a cry that sounded almost human in its joy and recognition. Marcus collapsed to his knees as Rex crashed into his arms, 80 pounds of muscle and fur and overwhelming emotion. They held each other in the kennel hallway while Marcus sobbed into Rex's neck, feeling the scars beneath his fingers and knowing that they had both survived hell to find each other again. Rex whimpered and licked Marcus' face with desperate intensity, as if trying to make up for 5 years of separation in a single moment. Dr. Vasquez watched from the doorway with tears in her eyes, understanding that she was witnessing something sacred between warrior and companion. Marcus ran his hands over Rex's body, checking every injury, every mark, whispering promises that they would never be separated again. Rex had lost weight and gained scars, but his spirit remained unbroken, his loyalty intact despite whatever trials had brought him across the world. The reunion felt like a miracle, but Marcus' military mind was already processing the impossibilities. Afghanistan to Montana was thousands of miles, and Rex couldn't have made that journey alone. Someone had helped him, cared for him, and delivered him here for reasons Marcus couldn't begin to understand. As he held his best friend close, Marcus felt the first stirrings of a new mission, a puzzle that demanded answers and might lead them both into dangers they couldn't imagine. Dr. Vasquez provided Marcus with Rex's medical records and the few possessions that came with him: a worn leather collar that wasn't military issue and a small metal container wrapped in weathered cloth. Marcus examined the container carefully, recognizing it as the type used to protect important documents in harsh conditions. Inside, he found a faded photograph of a young woman standing beside a German shepherd that looked remarkably like Rex, along with a letter written in the same careful handwriting as the note left at the clinic. The letter was addressed to the Marine who loved Rex and signed by someone named Catherine Morrison. She explained that her grandfather, Joseph Morrison, had been a dog handler in the Korean War and had spent his final years rescuing military working dogs from around the world through an underground network of veterans and supporters. He had passed away 3 months earlier, but not before making Catherine promise to return Rex to his rightful partner using the contact information he had painstakingly tracked down. The photograph showed Catherine's grandmother, also named Catherine, standing with Joseph's war dog in 1953, creating an eerie parallel across generations that made Marcus' skin crawl with recognition. Something about the Morrison name triggered a memory from his deployment, a conversation with an old-timer contractor who had mentioned a family legacy of dog rescue operations. Marcus spent the night at a small motel near the clinic, Rex sleeping beside his bed for the first time in 5 years. He studied the photograph and letter repeatedly, trying to piece together the mystery of Rex's journey home. Catherine Morrison had included her phone number, but when Marcus called, he reached only a disconnected line. The return address led to a remote property in the Bitterroot Mountains, nearly 200 miles away through treacherous winter terrain. Rex seemed agitated throughout the night, pacing to the window and whining softly, as if sensing that their reunion was only the beginning of something larger and more dangerous. Marcus remembered Joseph Morrison, now a grizzled contractor who had worked with the military police, always asking questions about dogs left behind, always carrying photographs of animals he claimed to be tracking. The old man had approached Marcus specifically during his last month in country, asking detailed questions about Rex training habits and identifying marks. Marcus had thought nothing of it at the time, assuming Morrison was simply another dog lover trying to help, but now the conversation took on sinister implications. If Morrison had been tracking Rex, how did he know Rex would be lost? And if he had spent years arranging Rex's rescue and return, why had he died before completing the mission personally? The questions multiplied like shadows as the storm continued to rage outside their window. The drive to the Morrison property took 6 hours through mountain passes that tested Marcus' driving skills and Rex's patience. The German Shepherd sat alert in the passenger seat, occasionally pressing his nose to the window and growling low at something Marcus couldn't see. The Morrison ranch sat in a valley surrounded by peaks that scraped the belly of gray clouds, accessible only by a single dirt road that wound through dense forest. The main house looked abandoned, its windows dark and driveway unplowed, but smoke rose from the chimney of a smaller cabin nestled among the trees. Marcus parked his truck and approached the cabin with Rex at his side, both of them moving with the careful awareness that had kept them alive in combat zones. The door opened before they could knock, revealing a woman in her 30s with the same careful eyes as her letter handwriting. Catherine Morrison looked exhausted, as if she hadn't slept properly in months, and her greeting held more relief than surprise. She invited them inside quickly, glancing over their shoulders at the tree line, as if expecting unwanted visitors. The cabin interior was spartanly furnished but warm, dominated by a massive stone fireplace and walls covered with photographs of military dogs and their handlers spanning several decades of American conflicts. Catherine moved nervously around the space, clearly struggling with how to begin a conversation that had been years in the making. Catherine Morrison's story unfolded slowly over hot coffee and the crackling of burning logs. Her grandfather Joseph had returned from Korea with nightmares and a mission that consumed the rest of his life tracking down and rescuing military working dogs abandoned or lost during American withdrawals from foreign conflicts. He had established a network of veterans, contractors, and locals in various countries who would locate, transport, and rehabilitate military animals, then arrange for their return to former handlers or suitable homes. The operation had remained completely underground, funded by Joseph's construction business and operated with military precision to avoid international complications. Rex had been one of Joseph's most challenging cases, located months after the withdrawal from Afghanistan and held in a facility that Joseph described only as problematic people with bad intentions. The rescue had required significant resources and dangerous negotiation with individuals who viewed Rex as valuable property rather than a living being with rights to freedom. Joseph had spent the last 2 years of his life planning Rex's journey home, but lung cancer had claimed him before he could personally deliver the dog to Marcus. Catherine had inherited both the mission and the problems that came with it, problems she was only beginning to understand when strange men started watching her property and asking questions about her grandfather's business activities. Rex suddenly stood and moved to the window, his body rigid with alertness that made the hair on Marcus' neck stand up. Outside, the wind had died to an ominous stillness that preceded either storms or trouble, and Rex's low growl suggested the latter. Catherine went pale as she looked through the window, confirming what Marcus already suspected: they were no longer alone in the wilderness. 3 black vehicles had appeared at the end of the valley road, too far to identify, but close enough to represent clear threat. Catherine explained frantically that these were the same men who had been harassing her for weeks, demanding information about her grandfather's overseas contacts and threatening violence if she didn't cooperate. They claimed Joseph had stolen property that belonged to them, and they wanted either the property returned or compensation paid. Marcus realized with growing dread that Rex represented more than just a rescued war dog. He was evidence of an international operation that had stepped on dangerous toes and left loose ends that someone was determined to tie up permanently. The black vehicles began moving toward the cabin with purposeful slowness, and Marcus found himself once again in a combat situation with Rex at his side, protecting innocent lives against enemies whose motives remained unclear but whose intentions were unmistakably hostile. Catherine grabbed a backpack that suggested she had been preparing for this moment, and Marcus understood that their mountain retreat was about to become a battlefield. The men who emerged from the black vehicles wore expensive suits inappropriate for mountain wilderness, but carried weapons that suggested serious military or criminal backgrounds. Marcus counted at least 6 figures moving with tactical precision toward the cabin, using the tree line for cover while maintaining communication through earpieces visible even at a distance. Rex positioned himself between the advancing threat and Catherine, his training evident in every movement as he assessed angles of attack and potential escape routes. Marcus' combat instincts kicked in fully as he evaluated their defensive position and found it desperately inadequate. The cabin offered limited cover, no back exit, and they were outnumbered 2-1 by attackers who clearly had professional training. Catherine revealed that her grandfather had anticipated this scenario, showing Marcus a hidden cellar entrance behind the fireplace that connected to old mining tunnels running throughout the valley. The tunnels would provide concealment but would also trap them underground with limited knowledge of exits or potential dead ends. Outside, the men had established a perimeter around the cabin and were beginning their approach with military precision that suggested they had done this type of operation before. Marcus realized they had perhaps minutes before the situation escalated to violence, and their only advantage was Rex's ability to navigate terrain and detect threats that human senses might miss. The leader of the attacking force announced himself through a megaphone, identifying himself as Vincent Kozlov and demanding that Catherine surrender her grandfather's records and any stolen assets in exchange for safe passage. His accent carried Eastern European inflections, and his demands confirmed Marcus' suspicions that Rex's rescue had involved crossing dangerous international criminals who viewed the dog as valuable property. Kozlov gave them exactly 5 minutes to comply before his team would enter the cabin and take what they wanted by force, making it clear that casualties were acceptable losses in their cost-benefit analysis. Marcus used those precious minutes to gather supplies from Catherine's emergency pack, while Rex scouted the tunnel entrance, his keen nose analyzing air currents and potential dangers waiting in the darkness below. Catherine's hands shook as she explained that her grandfather's records contained detailed information about the international network, including names, locations, and methods that could endanger dozens of veterans and animals if they fell into wrong hands. The weight of responsibility settled heavily on Marcus' shoulders as he realized this was no longer just about Rex's rescue. They were protecting an entire operation that had saved countless military animals and the lives connected to them. Rex returned from his scouting mission with urgent body language that suggested the tunnels were clear but complex, requiring guidance that only his superior senses could provide safely through the underground maze. The cellar entrance opened just as gunfire shattered the cabin windows, sending splinters of wood and glass across the room like deadly rain. Marcus pushed Catherine toward the tunnel opening while Rex took point position, his powerful body ready to defend against the first wave of attackers breaching the front door. The cellar stairs descended into complete darkness, that swallowed their flashlight beams like a hungry mouth, and the air below carried the musty scent of decades-old mining operations mixed with more recent use that suggested Joseph Morrison had prepared these tunnels as emergency escape routes. Rex moved confidently through the narrow passages, his night vision and superior hearing guiding them past branching corridors that could lead to freedom or trap them deeper underground. Behind them, they could hear Kozlov's men searching the cabin and discovering the hidden entrance, their voices echoing down the stone corridors with increasing frustration and anger. The tunnel system stretched far beyond what Marcus had expected, connecting to natural cave formations that had been expanded by miners seeking gold and silver deposits throughout the mountain range. Catherine whispered explanations about her grandfather's modifications to the tunnels, including supply caches, emergency exits, and communication equipment hidden at strategic points throughout the underground network. Rex paused frequently to scent-check their route, ensuring they weren't walking into dead ends or areas where Kozlov's men might have positioned blocking forces. The pursuit behind them intensified as Kozlov's team realized their quarry had escaped through the tunnel system, and the echoing sounds of multiple flashlights and heavy boots on stone indicated professional tracking capabilities that meant this chase was far from over. Rex led them through increasingly narrow passages that forced them to crawl single file through spaces barely wide enough for human shoulders, but the confined quarters also meant their pursuers would have to follow the same difficult route without tactical advantages. Marcus' military training kicked in fully as he realized they needed to reach one of Joseph's supply caches to acquire better weapons and communication equipment before Kozlov's superior numbers and firepower made escape impossible. Catherine's whispered directions guided them toward a cache location nearly a mile deeper into the mountain, but the route required crossing an underground river that ran fast and cold through a cavern system that had claimed the lives of experienced miners in previous decades. The sound of rushing water grew louder as they approached the crossing point, and Rex's hesitation at the water's edge suggested dangers that even his keen senses found concerning. Behind them, the sounds of pursuit continued to echo through the tunnels, and Marcus realized they were running out of time and options in an underground maze where one wrong turn could mean death by drowning, hypothermia, or enemy gunfire. The crossing would require trust in Rex's abilities and courage that Marcus wasn't sure any of them possessed in sufficient quantity to survive what lay ahead. The underground river roared through a cavern the size of a cathedral, its black waters reflecting their flashlight beams like liquid obsidian flowing toward destinations unknown. Joseph Morrison had installed a rope bridge system across the narrowest point, but the wooden planks looked treacherous, and the anchor points showed stress damage from years of mountain weather and geological shifts. Rex tested the bridge carefully with his front paws, his weight causing the entire structure to sway alarmingly over the churning water 20 feet below. Catherine revealed that her grandfather had warned her about this crossing, explaining that the water temperature never rose above 40 degrees and the current was strong enough to carry bodies miles downstream through underwater passages where recovery would be impossible. Marcus checked the rope anchors and found them solid despite their weathered appearance, but the bridge would only support one person at a time and would require careful timing to prevent disaster. Behind them, the sounds of pursuit were growing closer, and flashes of artificial light began reflecting off the cavern walls as Kozlov's men approached their position with determination that suggested they knew about the crossing point and had planned accordingly. Marcus realized they were walking into a trap, but going back meant certain capture or death, while going forward meant trusting their lives to a bridge that might collapse under their weight or deliver them into waiting weapons on the far side of the underground river. Rex made the decision for all of them, stepping confidently onto the rope bridge and beginning the crossing with steady precision that demonstrated either courage or desperation. The bridge swayed and creaked under his weight, but the German shepherd maintained perfect balance while testing each plank before committing his full weight to the crossing. Marcus followed immediately, knowing that Rex's survival instincts were more reliable than his own analysis of structural integrity, and Catherine came last with the backpack of her grandfather's records, secured tightly to prevent loss if she fell. Halfway across, the sounds of gunfire echoed through the cavern as Kozlov's men reached the water's edge and realized their quarry was escaping beyond immediate reach. Bullets ricocheted off stone walls and splashed into the river, but the distance and poor lighting made accurate shooting nearly impossible in the echoing darkness. Rex reached the far side safely and immediately began scouting for cover positions, while Marcus helped Catherine complete the crossing as more gunfire erupted behind them. The rope bridge would slow Kozlov's pursuit, but wouldn't stop determined professional criminals with proper equipment and unlimited time to plan their next move. Marcus realized they needed to reach the supply cache quickly and establish defensive positions before their enemies found alternative crossing points or brought reinforcements that could surround their position completely. The supply cache lay hidden behind a false wall in an abandoned mine shaft that required Rex's nose to locate among dozens of similar openings in the mountain face. Catherine's flashlight revealed her grandfather's careful preparations: military-grade weapons, ammunition, communication equipment, food supplies, and detailed maps of the entire tunnel system with multiple escape routes marked in different colors. Marcus found himself holding an M4 carbine that felt familiar and deadly in his hands after years of civilian life, while Rex investigated scent trails that suggested recent human activity in areas that should have been abandoned. The communication radio crackled with static and occasionally picked up transmissions that revealed Kozlov's team was larger than initially estimated and included personnel already positioned at various exit points throughout the valley. Catherine discovered her grandfather's journal detailing his confrontations with Kozlov's organization, revealing that Rex was only one of several military animals they claimed as property, and that Joseph's rescue network had interfered with their lucrative business of selling trained war dogs to private security companies and foreign governments. The journal entries painted a picture of escalating threats and violence that explained why Joseph had prepared the tunnels as battlegrounds rather than simple escape routes. Marcus realized they were fighting not just for Rex's freedom, but against an entire criminal enterprise that trafficked in the lives and loyalty of animals who had served their countries with honor and deserved better than slavery to the highest bidder. Rex suddenly alerted to danger from the tunnel entrance, his body language indicating immediate threat that sent Marcus diving for cover just as automatic gunfire erupted from the darkness beyond their position. Kozlov's advance team had found them faster than expected, using night vision equipment and professional tactics that made the mine shaft defensible but not impregnable against superior numbers and firepower. Marcus returned fire while Catherine took cover behind mining equipment, and Rex positioned himself to attack anyone who entered their defensive perimeter. The gunfight was brief but intense, with bullets ricocheting off stone walls and metal surfaces in a deadly symphony that reminded Marcus of combat zones he had hoped never to experience again. When the shooting stopped, 2 of Kozlov's men lay motionless at the tunnel entrance, while a third retreated to report their position and call for reinforcements. Rex had taken a grazing bullet across his shoulder, but remained combat-ready, his eyes bright with the same fierce loyalty that had made him invaluable during their deployment together. Marcus knew they had perhaps minutes before overwhelming force arrived, and their only option was to use Joseph Morrison's escape routes to reach the surface and attempt to evade capture in the mountain wilderness above. Catherine grabbed essential supplies while Marcus secured the remaining weapons and ammunition. But Rex's behavior suggested he had detected something important that required investigation before they abandoned their position completely. Rex led them deeper into the mine shaft system, following scent trails that bypassed the main tunnels and led toward areas not shown on Joseph Morrison's maps. His nose guided them through passages that seemed to descend toward the mountain's core, where the air grew warmer and carried unfamiliar chemical odors that made Marcus' combat senses tingle with warning. They emerged into a vast underground chamber that had been converted into a sophisticated holding facility, complete with climate control, veterinary equipment, and dozens of empty kennels that suggested recent occupation by many animals. Catherine gasped as she realized they had discovered the source of Klav's determination to silence anyone connected to her grandfather's operations. This was the staging area, where military and police dogs were held before being sold to international buyers, a facility that represented millions of dollars in illegal trafficking revenue. Computer equipment lined one wall, displaying records of transactions and client lists that included terrorist organizations, drug cartels, and foreign governments seeking trained attack dogs for purposes that violated every international treaty governing animal welfare and military ethics. Rex moved through the facility with growing agitation, his nose telling him stories about the animals who had suffered in this underground prison, while waiting to be sold to buyers who would use their training for evil purposes. Marcus realized they had stumbled onto evidence that could destroy Kozlov's entire organization, but they were also trapped in the facility's lowest level with limited escape routes, and enemies closing in from multiple directions above them. The sound of heavy machinery echoed through the chamber as Kozlov's team began sealing tunnel entrances to prevent escape and force a final confrontation in the underground facility. Marcus quickly photographed the computer records and client lists while Catherine gathered physical evidence that could be used to prosecute the trafficking operation in international courts. Rex continued exploring the facility and discovered a section of kennels that had been recently occupied, with scent trails leading toward a sealed exit that appeared to connect to the surface through a concealed entrance somewhere on the mountain face. The machinery sounds grew louder and closer, accompanied by the echo of many boots on stone as Kozlov brought his full force to bear on their position with tactics designed to eliminate witnesses rather than capture them alive. Marcus realized they were facing a siege situation with limited ammunition, no outside support, and enemies who controlled all known exits from the underground complex. Catherine revealed that her grandfather had mentioned emergency protocols for the facility, including explosive charges that could collapse certain sections to prevent the evidence from falling into enemy hands, but using those charges might also trap them permanently in the underground chamber. Rex's exploration had revealed what appeared to be a natural cave system connecting to the facility, but following that route would mean abandoning the evidence and trusting their lives to unknown dangers in unexplored passages that might lead to freedom or death. Kozlov's voice echoed through the facility's intercom system as his team established control over the upper levels and began their methodical advance toward the main chamber. He offered Marcus and Catherine one final opportunity to surrender the evidence and walk away alive, but his tone carried the casual menace of someone accustomed to eliminating problems permanently. Marcus understood that Kozlov's offer was worthless. They had seen too much and knew too many details about the trafficking operation to be allowed to survive as potential witnesses. Rex positioned himself at the entrance to the natural cave system, his body language indicating that his superior senses had detected safe passage through routes that human exploration might miss entirely. Catherine activated her grandfather's emergency protocols, setting charges that would destroy the computer records and facility equipment while creating enough chaos to cover their escape attempt through Rex's chosen route. The explosions would bring down sections of the ceiling and possibly seal them into the cave system permanently, but staying meant certain death, while following Rex offered the slim possibility of reaching the surface alive. Marcus made the decision that had kept him alive through 3 combat tours: trust the dog, whose instincts had never failed him, even when logic suggested impossible odds. Rex led them into the natural cave system just as the first explosions shook the mountain foundations and plunged the facility into darkness and falling stone that would occupy Kozlov's attentions for the precious minute to escape into the unknown passages as ahead. The cave system that Rex navigated with confident purpose proved to be a complex network of natural passages carved by underground streams over geological ages, some wide enough for comfortable passage while others required crawling through spaces barely adequate for human bodies. Rex's superior night vision and keen sense of smell guided them through branching corridors where wrong choices could lead to dead ends, underground lakes, or passages too narrow for escape if they encountered obstacles ahead. Behind them, the sounds of explosions and falling stone gradually faded, replaced by the drip of water and echo of their own breathing in spaces that had known no human presence for thousands of years. Catherine's flashlight revealed cave formations of stunning beauty, stalactites and flowstone that created natural cathedrals decorated with mineral deposits that sparkled like jewels in their artificial light. Rex paused frequently to scent-check their route, ensuring they followed passages with air circulation that indicated eventual connection to the surface rather than sealed systems that would become their tomb. Marcus found himself trusting Rex's guidance completely, remembering countless patrol situations where the German Shepherd's senses had detected dangers that human awareness missed entirely. The cave system seemed to extend for miles through the mountain's interior, but Rex moved with growing confidence that suggested he could detect their destination even when the human members of their group felt completely lost in the underground maze. Hours passed in careful navigation through passages that tested their endurance and courage, but Rex never hesitated in his route selection toward what he clearly sensed as safety and freedom above. The first hint of natural light appeared as a faint glow in the distance after what felt like an eternity of underground travel through Rex's chosen passages. The German Shepherd's pace quickened as they approached what revealed itself to be a cave opening high on the mountain face, overlooking a valley different from the one they had entered through Joseph Morrison's cabin. Marcus realized that Rex had guided them completely through the mountain range to emerge miles from their starting point, making pursuit or ambush nearly impossible for enemies who assumed they remained trapped in the collapsed facility below. The cave opening provided a spectacular view of wilderness that stretched to the horizon without any sign of human presence or activity, but it also left them stranded on a mountain face with limited supplies and no transportation back to civilization. Catherine checked her grandfather's maps and determined they were at least 20 miles from the nearest road, separated by terrain that would challenge experienced hikers under ideal conditions and could prove deadly for unprepared travelers in winter weather. Rex seemed unconcerned by the distance. His attention focused on scent trails that suggested wildlife and water sources necessary for survival in the wilderness ahead. Marcus evaluated their supplies and found them adequate for several days of careful rationing, but insufficient for extended survival if they encountered bad weather or became lost in unfamiliar territory. The immediate danger from Kozlov's organization had passed, but they now faced the challenge of reaching safety through mountain wilderness that offered its own potentially fatal obstacles. The descent from the cave opening required rock climbing skills that challenged their endurance and tested Rex's remarkable agility on steep terrain that would intimidate experienced mountaineers. Marcus used his military training to establish anchor points and belay systems that allowed safe passage for Catherine, while Rex demonstrated his ability to navigate vertical surfaces with confidence that bordered on supernatural. The mountain face offered handholds and ledges that made descent possible, but required careful attention to weather conditions and rock stability that could change without warning due to temperature fluctuations or geological stress. Catherine proved more capable than Marcus had expected, drawing on childhood experiences with her grandfather's outdoor training to maintain steady progress down the challenging route. Rex scouted ahead whenever possible, identifying safe rest positions and alternative routes when the primary path became too dangerous for human passage without specialized equipment they didn't possess. Hours of careful descent brought them to a forested slope where normal hiking became possible, but also where Rex's alertness suggested the presence of wildlife that might view them as either threat or prey depending on species and circumstances. Marcus realized they were entering grizzly bear country during a season when animals were preparing for winter and might be particularly aggressive in defending territory or food sources. Rex's behavior indicated he was aware of the wildlife dangers, but confident in his ability to detect and avoid confrontations that could prove fatal for the entire group. The forest descent led to a mountain stream that provided fresh water and a natural highway toward lower elevations where rescue or civilization might be possible. Rex tested the water carefully before allowing his human companions to drink, his senses detecting purity levels and potential contamination that could cause illness or death in their current vulnerable situation. The stream bed offered easier travel than fighting through dense forest, but also left them exposed to observation from higher elevations where Kozlov's organization might have positioned surveillance or tracking teams. Marcus decided the risk was acceptable given their need to reach help before their supplies ran out or weather conditions deteriorated beyond survivable levels. Catherine's knowledge of her grandfather's regional operations revealed the existence of a ranger station approximately 15 miles downstream, staffed by personnel who had occasionally assisted with Joseph Morrison's legitimate wildlife rescue activities and might provide sanctuary while they contacted appropriate authorities. Rex ranged ahead of their position, scouting for obstacles and threats while maintaining visual contact with his human charges in tactical formation that had served them well during combat operations. The stream valley provided natural beauty that contrasted sharply with the dangers they had escaped, but Marcus remained alert for signs that their enemies had anticipated this escape route and positioned forces to intercept them before they could reach safety. Rex's calm demeanor suggested the immediate area was secure, but his periodic alerts to movement in the forest reminded them that wilderness survival required constant vigilance against both human and natural threats. The ranger station appeared through the forest like an answer to prayer, its rustic buildings and communication equipment representing contact with civilization and safety after their harrowing escape through the mountain interior. Rex approached the station with caution, his senses analyzing the area for any indication that their enemies had reached this location before them or that the facility might be compromised by hostile surveillance. Marcus observed the station through binoculars scavenged from Joseph Morrison's emergency supplies, noting normal activity patterns and the presence of Park Service vehicles that suggested regular operations rather than enemy occupation. Catherine explained that the ranger station staff included veterans who had worked with her grandfather on legitimate wildlife projects and could be trusted to provide assistance without asking uncomfortable questions about their appearance or circumstances. Rex's body language gradually relaxed as his investigation confirmed the absence of immediate threats, allowing Marcus to approach the station openly and request emergency assistance. The station supervisor, a former Army sergeant named Tom Bradley, recognized Catherine immediately and offered shelter while they contacted appropriate authorities to report the criminal organization they had discovered. Bradley's experience with Joseph Morrison's activities provided context for their story that eliminated the need for lengthy explanations about underground facilities and international trafficking operations. Rex accepted Bradley's attention with dignity that acknowledged a fellow veteran's respect for military service and sacrifice. The next 24 hours brought a convergence of law enforcement agencies, military investigators, and international crime specialists who transformed the quiet ranger station into a command center for operations targeting Kozlov's trafficking network. Catherine's evidence and testimony provided the foundation for coordinated raids that shut down facilities in 6 countries and resulted in the rescue of over 40 military and police dogs destined for sale to criminal organizations. Marcus found himself debriefed by investigators who recognized the significance of Rex's role in exposing the trafficking operation and credited the German Shepherd's guidance with saving not only their lives of countless animals, but the lives of suffered in criminal hands. Kozlov and his organization faced charges that would ensure lengthy prison sentences, while the rescued animals began rehabilitation programs designed to place them with veteran families or appropriate service organizations. Rex received medical treatment for his injuries and a clean bill of health that confirmed his readiness to resume normal life with Marcus after their extraordinary adventure. Catherine decided to continue her grandfather's legitimate rescue work through legal channels, using the publicity from the case to establish a foundation that would provide support for military working dog retirement and placement programs. Marcus realized that Rex's return had brought more than personal happiness. It had led to justice for animals and handlers who deserved better than abandonment or exploitation after serving their countries with honor and loyalty that demanded similar dedication from the humans they protected. The drive back to Marcus, Wyoming ranch felt like a journey to a completely different world than the one they had left just days earlier, when Rex was still a memory rather than a living presence in the truck's passenger seat. Rex seemed content to watch the familiar landscape roll past, occasionally pressing his nose to the window, but mainly resting with the relaxation of a soldier who had completed his mission successfully. Marcus found himself planning changes to the ranch that would accommodate Rex's needs and provide the peaceful retirement that every veteran deserved after service and sacrifice beyond what most humans could imagine or appreciate. The empty dog bed by the fireplace would be filled again, but more importantly, the emptiness in Marcus' heart had been replaced by the joy of reunion and the satisfaction of completing a mission that had brought justice to those who deserved punishment and freedom to those who had earned it through loyal service. Catherine called periodically to update them on legal proceedings and the placement of rescued animals, creating a network of support that ensured Rex's story would help other military working dogs find their way home to families who understood their value and dedication. Marcus realized that his own healing process had been completed not through therapy or medication, but through the opportunity to serve and protect alongside Rex once again in circumstances that proved their partnership remained as strong as ever despite years of separation and unknown hardships. Rex settled into ranch life with the contentment of a warrior who had found peace after completing his final mission, but his alertness and intelligence remained sharp enough to remind Marcus daily of the extraordinary bond between military handlers and their canine partners. The scars Rex carried told stories that Marcus would never know completely, but their healing represented the resilience and strength that had brought them both through military service and civilian challenges that tested their character and determination. Evening walks around the ranch property became meditation sessions where Marcus reflected on the meaning of loyalty, courage, and the price of freedom that both humans and animals paid to protect values worth defending. Rex seemed to understand the significance of their ranch sanctuary, treating it as territory to be protected but also as home to be enjoyed after too many years of uncertainty and danger. Visitors to the ranch, particularly veterans and their families, were welcomed by Rex with dignity and recognition that suggested he understood his role as ambassador for military working dogs everywhere who deserved respect and gratitude rather than abandonment or exploitation. The foundation that Catherine established in her grandfather's honor received support from veterans organizations, law enforcement agencies, and private donors who understood that military working dogs deserved retirement benefits equal to their human partners after completing service that often involved greater sacrifice and danger than most people realized. Marcus became a spokesman for the foundation, sharing Rex's story and the broader issue of military working dog welfare with audiences who needed to understand that these animals were warriors, not equipment, and deserved treatment that honored their service and sacrifice. Rex accompanied Marcus to speaking engagements, demonstrating through his presence and behavior the intelligence, loyalty, and courage that made military working dogs invaluable partners in protecting human lives and accomplishing missions that would be impossible without their unique capabilities. The partnership between Marcus and Rex evolved from handler and dog to teammates in a new mission that emphasized education, advocacy, and support for veterans, both human and canine, who had earned the right to peaceful retirement after serving causes greater than their individual welfare. Their story inspired legislation that improved retirement benefits and placement programs for military working dogs while raising public awareness of the sacrifice and dedication these animals provided to protect freedoms that most citizens took for granted. Let me know where you're hearing this story from, and please share your own story about a faithful companion who changed your life. Rex's journey from lost war dog to rescue hero proves that the bonds formed in service transcend time and distance, bringing together partners who understand that loyalty and courage create families stronger than blood relations. The ranch in Wyoming became a gathering place for veterans and their families who needed to see proof that healing and happiness were possible after service and sacrifice that left invisible wounds requiring more than medical treatment to heal completely. Rex welcomed every visitor with recognition that seemed to acknowledge shared experiences of service, danger, and the challenge of finding purpose and peace in civilian life after military careers dedicated to protecting others. Marcus discovered that sharing their story provided therapy more effective than years of counseling, creating connections with other veterans who understood the unique challenges of military working dog handlers and the special bond that developed between human and canine partners. The ranch hosted retreats for veteran families, educational programs for school children, and fundraising events for military working dog welfare that transformed Marcus' quiet retirement into active service for causes that honored his military experience while building foundations for future generations. Rex seemed to thrive in his role as therapy dog and ambassador for military working dog programs, demonstrating daily that retirement from active service didn't mean retirement from meaningful contribution to community and country that had shaped both his and Marcus' character through shared experiences of courage, loyalty, and dedication to principles worth defending with their lives. Their partnership proved that some bonds transcend species barriers and create families united by service, sacrifice, and mutual respect that provided healing and hope for others facing similar challenges in their journey from military service to civilian life. Support this mission by subscribing to help these stories reach people who need to hear them, and remember to thank the veterans and their families who continue serving our communities with the same dedication they showed during their military careers, often alongside four-legged partners whose loyalty and courage deserve recognition and gratitude from the civilians they protected through their service and sacrifice.